Sex workers of Reddit, what is the saddest experience, client-wise, you've had while on the job? Had a client who didn't speak much English. Afterwards we were lying down together. I got out my phone and we had a conversation via Google Translate. He told me that his wife had died 4 months earlier and that this was the first time he'd felt normal since. I worked as an escort for about a year and a half. I had a regular client with a number of mental health issues in his mid-30s. He was an Asian guy whose family didn't believe in mental illness. He wouldn't socialize with anyone except for his family. He had a mental breakdown the year prior and had to quit his job. He had to sell his house and move back in with his parents. He had never had sex with anyone who wasn't a prostitute. He had never been on a date with a woman or had any female friends. He would book overnight appointments with me and we wouldn't even have sex. He just wanted the company. That's $3,500 he was paying for a sleepover with me. All he would ever want to do was talk and cuddle. He once told me I was his best friend. And how sad that was considering he had to pay me. And if there was no payment, I wouldn't even be there. Broke my heart. I cared for him very much. And still think of him from time to time. I had a guy the first gave a few lap dances to. His buddy took him out because he just got divorced. His wife was the one who left him. He was crying. I tried to give him a pep talk. Most of the time I spent was holding him. I obviously wasn't helping much. A stripper doesn't even come close to replacing your wife of 20 years. Especially when you've never been with anyone else. I almost cried too. Several of my male friends have told me that the worst thing after a breakup is that no one touches them. Just the physical comfort you offered probably helped that guy more than you imagine. My ex left me about 3 years ago. The breakup was unpleasant to say the least. It was horrible, but I had my cat to comfort me. I had to put her down last year. I had her for 22 years. I don't ever remember not having her. I'll put it this way. I am so lonely and starved for affection that I had a dream where I had a girlfriend. My alarm went off and I called in sick to work so I could continue to dream about having a girlfriend. God. That sounds so pathetic typing that out. I'm a stripper and honestly I refer to myself as a naked therapist. Probably my saddest moment was when a man was crying to me in VIP about his divorce. Another time I had someone come out as gay in a private dance. That was sad because he was married with a kid and didn't know what to do. I've worked as a dominatrix and as an escort, and my saddest experience was one of my submissives. I saw this client a few times. He was morbidly obese but very intelligent, funny and had a successful career. He was heavily into receiving pain and our sessions were on the more extreme end. Afterwards he'd want to cuddle and chat and laugh. One day, after our session, he told me he was finally retiring and going to solo travel and have some experiences. Not long after, a coworker who was a friend of him outside of work told me he had passed away. Based on the timeline, I doubt he ended up vacationing. I've had other clients who were depressed, in bad marriages, or unhappy with their lives. But he was the only client that I'd known to have passed away, and under such sad circumstances. Dancer here. I've had a bunch of clients that would take me to a booth and then just start crying. I feel bad for them, but I do my best to console them, and I never rip off customers. However, one night this guy came in with about $5,000 to $10,000 in cash. I don't know exactly how much. A few girls approached him but left quickly. I went to talk to him, and he wanted to go for a dance but needed help walking and stuff as he was very old. We got to the booth and he started talking about his deceased wife who died while she was pregnant, and how he wished she was there, and can I find a fat dancer instead so he could pretend it's his pregnant dead wife. Kinda weird, but I happen to work in childcare, so I told him that, and asked if he'd like to hear stories of the children I take care of. He said yes, and so I told him different cute stories of children I take care of. He took out a huge wad of $100 and set it down on the little table next to the couch. I was going to spend the entire night with him and only charge what I earned per hour, which would have been plenty anyway. However, a few other dancers noticed the money, so they bribed the bouncer to kick me out on a fake account of letting the guy touch my pussy, and then the bouncer stole the stack from the guy saying, he broke the rules and split the cash with the two dancers. I never worked there again. I work as a cam girl. There are a lot of sad stories, dead wives, divorcees, etc. But the one that hit me was this guy. We'll call him Steve. Steve sends me a message during one of my public shows asking to go private. I go private with him after the show and he just wants to talk about my life. No nudity or anything. And in privates, his cam isn't visible to me. So I sit there talking about my life for about 2 hours at $5 per minute and he doesn't say a word. I finally run out of things to say and he is just like, thanks. Can I buy your Snapchat? Of course I say yes. I give him my Snapchat. And he signs off. The next week, I get a Snapchat from Steve asking if we can private again. I say sure. We do the same thing. He just wants me to talk about my day and random life stories for 2 hours. We do this once a week for about a month before he asks to Skype where I can see him. I agree. I still know literally nothing about this person. It's our scheduled time to Skype and he doesn't pick up the call. I snap him to make sure everything is okay and he says he's changed his mind. He wants to do our usual thing where I can't see him. I say okay. This time, though, he types to me and I respond. Basically, he gives me his life story. He tells me that he is an independent software developer, won't say which for privacy reasons, in Switzerland. He's never had a girlfriend and is a virgin. He's 36 years old. He has crippling social anxiety and says he hasn't spoken to a woman face to face, not even via webcam, since he graduated from college. He says that he's hideously ugly and felt overwhelming guilt for even looking at a woman because he felt that it was just unwanted and offensive to her. I tried to just listen and be understanding. At the end of the conversation, he asked if he could turn on his cam and try to have a conversation with me. I agreed. He turns on his cam, and he's a totally average-looking guy, a bit overweight, but a handsome face and a nice haircut. Clean looking. I was shocked and just really sad that he thought so lowly of himself. I told him that he was very handsome and that he shouldn't think so lowly of himself. And we just chatted about life for a few more hours that night before saying goodbye. The next day, I get a Snapchat from Steve. He says that he felt so good about himself that he finally said hi to the front desk receptionist at work, and she said hi back and smiled. He was thrilled about this normal social interaction. We didn't video chat again, but he snapped me every time he interacted with somebody. Last I heard, he has a girlfriend. A husband and wife booked me for a threesome, because having a lesbian experience was on her bucket list. She'd recently recovered from a double mastectomy and had just been diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor, despite undergoing chemotherapy. In a private, fully clothed moment between the husband and I, he told me she doesn't have long left, and the way they looked at each other was so beautiful. Just pure love. I was a dancer in college for girls and gay clubs. Never did anything private but would sit with generous customers. Most of the time I just tuned out whatever they were saying. Had one older guy that always wanted to talk and always said I reminded him of his ex-boyfriend. I'm straight and honestly probably not the nicest dancer in the club, but he wasn't creepy. He brought in a bunch of photos of him with his boyfriend that were around 30 years old, and the guy looked like he could be my brother. The patron had married a woman, had a family and lived a straight life in public. All he ever did was talk about his boyfriend that had died shortly after he was married. He was so full of regret for not spending time with his boyfriend. It was just painful. He never proposed anything else. Was always super respectful and generous. I genuinely felt bad for the guy. Not my story, but I knew a girl who did rent a night type of stuff. Guy asks her if she could come over. Doesn't talk about sex over the phone, just if she could come over and to come hungry. She arrives at like 6 p.m. She asks what he would like to do. He just cooks for her. His wife had passed and always loved his cooking, but he hates cooking for himself. I had a few clients in my hometown and neighboring city. They were somewhat older, more career-accomplished women who wanted discreet companionship. Most of them just wanted to cuddle and talk or listen to music and lay with me. Some liked drugs. Almost all of them liked wine. All of them were lonely. One of my clients was constantly out at parties or business functions. very social and successful, and would contact me after. On Christmas one year she told me that she was previously married. Her husband started her business with her before he died. She told me she lived the happiest life with him but that it was too short. I think she was looking for a similar replacement for her husband, but nobody lived up to the guy. Relationships are hard and then we die. Not a sex worker, but I've related this sad blurb before, so she probably gets at least a participation trophy in the saddest experience category. Prostitutes of Reddit. What is the weirdest, out-the-norm non-sexual thing you have been paid to do? A coworker said he paid a Craigslist hooker to dress up nice and go with him to his mother's funeral and the reception afterwards because he didn't want to be given a hard time about being alone. Okay, this makes me sad just typing it. A lot of clients from these stories seem to want a therapist who can cuddle them.